Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show. I wanted to talk about a team that deserves a lot of credit. And this is a team that many people, including myself, actually underrated going into the season. And that is Cuonzo Martin and his Missouri Tigers from the SEC, who picked up one of their biggest wins in most recent years on Saturday night as they knocked off Illinois by a final score of 81-78. It was a game that was close throughout. It was a battle throughout the stretch. Missouri did hold the lead for most of the game, including most of the first half, but Illinois kept fighting back, but ultimately Cuonzo Martin and his Missouri Tigers ended up getting one of their bigger wins in recent memory. And right now, when you look at the SEC, I got to be honest with you guys. Tennessee just started playing, right? So they're a team that right now I have in my top 5. They had a nice win over Colorado, had a nice win over Cincinnati. Both of those wins were at home. But really, besides Tennessee, and let's leave Missouri out of the equation here for just 1 second, no team in the SEC really has impressed me or taken off. We all know what the deal is with Kentucky. LSU lost their one big game against St. Louis. Florida, we obviously hope Keontae Johnson is going to be okay, but at the same time, they got manhandled by Florida State after he left the game, and they haven't really looked impressive in their wins. And you guys know, if you listen to this show, I'm not the biggest Mike White believer. Ole Miss has only played one game yet. We'll see what they end up looking like. But then teams at the bottom, South Carolina, Texas A&M, those are the teams that have been disappointing me a little bit as well. But then you have Missouri, and the Tigers are a team that before the season I predicted to come in 8th place in the SEC, and they were a team that I thought was going to be hovering right around the NIT mark. And one thing that I've really noticed throughout this college basketball season, and usually this is a trend that I'm on top on right away, but at the same time, I feel like this trend is more important and occurs more in a kind of season like this with COVID-19 than any other season, and that is that the narrative speaks true that chemistry and returning talent is one of the key ingredients you need in order to be successful in 2020-2021 college basketball. Because let's state the facts here. Look at Duke. They're a team full of freshmen, a team full of top 100 recruits, and if you would have asked anyone prior to the season who is better, Duke or Missouri, I don't think there would have been one person at all that would have told you Missouri, and that includes the people that are the high school basketball gurus that were watching this Duke team and their freshmen play in high school last year, day in and day out. But what this Missouri team has shown me is this. It's a team that last year who finished 7-11 in the SEC and 15-16 in conference play. They were not expected to be very good going into this SEC season. But one thing about this Missouri team was they brought back basically everyone from last year's squad. If you go over the leading scorers for last year's Missouri Tiger team, right? You have Drew Smith. He averaged 12.7 points per game. He's back. Xavier Pinson, he averaged 11.1 points per game. He's back. Mark Smith, 10 points a game. He's back. Jeremiah Tillman, 8.2 points per game. He's back. Javon Pickett, 6.6 points per game. He's back. Kobe Brown, 5.8 points per game. He's back. Mitchell Smith, 5.1 points per game. He's back. So Missouri did return their top 7 leading scorers from last year's squad. And at the same time, I understand why there were a bunch of people that were a little skeptical about this Missouri Tiger team going into this season, because even though they returned a lot of talent, there was no guarantee that these guys were going to get any better. And for me, that's why, in my opinion, this season was pretty big for a head coach like Cuonzo Martin. Now, if you're not familiar with Cuonzo Martin and his coaching background, he's had a very interesting ride. He used to be the head coach of Tennessee. He had a lot of success there, including leading them to a Sweet 16 appearance as an 11 seed in 2014. But then after that, he goes to Cal. And his tenure at Cal did end up going pretty well, especially on the recruiting trail. He was able to bring in a lot of very good and a lot of talented players, a lot of highly ranked recruits like Ivan Rabb and Jaylen Brown, both guys who are playing in the NBA or at some professional level right now. And then he gets to Missouri, and we all know the first move he makes is bringing in Michael Porter Jr. And at the time, Michael Porter was committed to Washington, but the Huskies fired their coach. Cuonzo then decides to bring in one of the Porter's relatives, I believe their dad, as an assistant coach, and the rest is history. Michael Porter commits to the University of Missouri, same with his younger brother, Jontay Porter, and for the first time in a while, going into the 2017-2018 season, there was some hype around this Missouri Tiger basketball program with the two Porters and some of the other guys they had. And even though we all know what ended up happening with Michael Porter, he got hurt, but they still ended up making the NCAA tournament, which for a school like Missouri is a step forward. Then, 2 years ago, Michael Porter leaves for the NBA. That's something we all expected would happen. But his younger brother, Jontay Porter, comes back, and before the season starts, he tears his ACL. And that was an injury that killed this Missouri Tiger squad. And the reason why I'm bringing up Jontay Porter and his injury is because that's when most of these kids currently on the Missouri Tigers were freshmen. So kids like Xavier Pinson and Javon Pickett, they really had to establish a role for themselves right away. That year, Jeremiah Tillman, he averaged 10. Mark Smith averaged 11. But then you also look at it, right? Javon Pickett, he averaged 7.7. Xavier Pinson, he averaged 6. So these were guys that were really thrown into the fire right away and really were expected to produce. And unfortunately for the Missouri Tigers, the wins weren't coming. And Jontay Porter gets hurt. They missed the NCAA tournament 2 years ago. And then last year, it was when it really started to hit me that, like, all right, maybe this Missouri program is a little bland. I didn't want to say it was in trouble, but I just felt like it wasn't really going anywhere anytime soon. And that's like the worst place to be if you're a college basketball fan. Like right in the middle of a Power 5 league where your program isn't exactly relevant, but at the same time, it's not bad enough for most people to notice and to just crap on you. And I really feel like that's where Missouri was going into this season. And the reason why earlier I brought up Jaylen Brown and Ivan Rabb in regards to Cuonzo Martin and his recruiting was because I thought that, okay, Cuonzo Martin has brought in those two guys to a school that he used to coach at. And then since he got to Missouri, he brings in Michael Porter, who during the NBA bubble was playing significant minutes in the playoffs for the Denver Nuggets. The same thing with Jontay Porter. He's a pro right now. So I thought Cuonzo Martin could take a little bit more advantage of the recruiting names in the past that he's been able to bring in. Unfortunately, that hasn't really translated. But at the same time, where I will give Cuonzo Martin credit is this. He's really developed this nice core of young players, and they're not so young now. Most of them are upperclassmen. But these guys have a lot of experience playing against each other. And here's the crazy thing about Missouri, and more specifically in this game against Illinois. Mark Smith, who is Missouri's leading scorer, he didn't play that well in this game. He only had 6 points. You also look at Jeremiah Tillman in 18 minutes. He's Missouri's top big man. He only had 3 points. And if you follow Jeremiah Tillman, he's a senior right now. And his main trouble in the past couple of years of his college basketball career has been staying on the floor and avoiding foul trouble. And I feel like this season, Jeremiah Tillman has really noticed that, okay, in order for this Missouri team to be successful, I don't need to be the guy that's averaging 20 and 10. I just need to stay on the floor and avoid foul trouble. And the fact that so far this season he's done a pretty good job of that, but more specifically in the game against Illinois, in 18 minutes, he went 0 for 2 from the field and had 3 points. But other guys were able to step up. Drew Smith, the Evansville transfer, was great. 39 minutes, 5 of 11 from the field, 17 points. You also look at Xavier Pinson, 6 of 13 from the field, 17 points. Javon Pickett, this is a guy that's more of a glue guy. You don't really expect him to be balling out from the field and be one of your main contributors offensively for Missouri. In 24 minutes, he has 14 points in the game, and Missouri deserves a lot of credit for the way they played against Illinois. And here's the other thing. Ayo Dosunmu was balling out for Illinois. Even though throughout the game it was pretty obvious to me that Missouri looked like the better team, I did think for a second that, oh wow, maybe there's a chance Illinois steals this game because they just went into Duke and won. They know what a rowdy, raucous environment is like, even in the 2020 pandemic world. Playing at Missouri in a bragging rights game, that's never an easy game. And even though Missouri didn't get really their big-time contributions from the suspects that you would have expected it to happen from, they were still able to get the job done because other guys were able to step up. And for me, that's the sign of a very good basketball team. And when you look around the SEC, I mentioned it at the beginning of the segment, besides Tennessee, I think there's an argument to be made that Missouri is the second best team in the SEC right now, maybe even first. I understand they have better wins than Tennessee, but that's a toss-up, and luckily they're going to play early in SEC play. And the thing is this, is that when you look around the SEC right now, I'm not sure there are many other out-of-conference wins by teams in this conference that are better than the 2 wins Missouri has right now, because obviously Missouri beats Illinois. That's like a top 10 team. They just went into Duke and won. Great win for Missouri. That's going to be a resume booster. But let's not forget, this is a Missouri team that beat Oregon in Creighton in Omaha, Nebraska. Oregon, to me, looks like one of the better teams in the Pac-12, and still, this Missouri Tiger team handled them in only their second game of the season. And once again, the road is going to get a little tougher for Missouri to start off SEC play. They will be at home against Tennessee, and then they will be at Arkansas, and then at Mississippi State. If Missouri could go 2-1 in that stretch during SEC play, I think most Tiger fans would sign up for it. But the good thing about this Missouri team is that I thought that all things didn't exactly go their way against Illinois, and still they were able to find a way to win. And when you look around the SEC, Kentucky obviously doesn't have the quality of wins that a Missouri has. You look at Tennessee, I love them. They're in my top 10. They don't have the same number of big-time quality wins. Neither does LSU. Neither does Alabama, who's been a little disappointing to start off this season. And I think Missouri is definitely a team to watch here, because I watched them against Illinois. I watched them against Oregon. And to me, they looked like the better team in both instances. And I'll give some credit to Konzo Martin. This was a big season for him. This was a season for him, I think, to prove a lot of the doubters wrong. And I do believe he's done a very good job of doing that.